Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Answers by Senso, where we demystify anything related to AI. We at Senso spend a lot of time with enterprises and model providers, and we're sitting at the center and the intersection of the two. And as we engage with these two communities that are constantly evolving, we hear a lot of questions out there, questions about how the future of large language models are going to impact their brand. And one of the big things we always hear about is, brands and marketers are working on SEO and they have best practices over 2 decades. And now all of a sudden with LLMs, it completely changes the landscape. And there's a transition to this concept called generative engine optimization or AEO or GEO. There's a few terms that are emerging out of this. And like marketers in particular have a lot of questions of what this means to their traditional practices and how to transition into the future. So today we've invited a very special guest, Federico Pascual, and he has an amazing background. And I'm going to get him to explain his background in a second. But he is really also sitting at this intersection of SEO and what this means for brands as they transition into the future. So Federico, super excited to have you on board and thank you for joining. The first question I'll ask is give everyone perspective about your background and WordCrafter and really what SEO intelligence is all about.
Perfect. A quick background on me. I have been working in AI for more than 11 years now. First, I co-founded a machine learning company that analyzed text data at scale. We got amazing customers like Snapchat, GitHub, and Salesforce, and we eventually got acquired. Then I worked at Hugging Face, one of the leading AI players, as the head of marketing. I'm now currently at WordCrafter. Basically, WordCrafter is a tool that helps you understand what people are looking for when they are searching for a particular keyword and what Google rewards for that particular keyword. And WordCrafter helps you, understand what type of content you need to create, how you need to structure it, what topics you need to cover, how long, how short it should be, all with the help of AI.
Amazing, amazing. It's so timely for what you're doing because we spend so much time with brands similar to what you do. And one of the biggest questions they have is, they have best practices around SEO and, amazing tools like yourself. But one of the big elephants in the room that we're always asked is LLMs going to change the best practices that, we've instilled in our workflows for decades, for the past 2 decades? And like, how should we think about managing the two? Is it like, is it one thing? Is it just an additive layer or is it two separate work streams? Do we need to optimize for SEO and GEO separately? I'd love to get your thoughts in terms of how you think about this on a day-to-day basis as you engage your customer base.
That's a great question. The SEO world is changing with things like, AI overviews or ChatGPT. The world is changing. But I see this like a nice set of opportunities, that we can take advantage. I see opportunities on both fronts, of creating content and optimizing for, things like ChatGPT, but also on opportunities for SEO. So for example, one of the things that LLMs are really, really good and AI models in general is processing large amounts of data. That's basically what ChatGPT does. When you go to ChatGPT and ask what is the best tool for X, they made a web search and process these amazing amounts of information really quickly and gives you an answer. So I think one key thing that is changing is that with this key insight that LLMs are really good at processing large amounts of data, I think there is an opportunity now more than ever to increase our coverage and increase the depth of our content and our online presence. Because basically we need to be out there popping up with our brand and with our company. Whenever an LLM makes a search, we need to be there. It doesn't cut it with just having a basic website and having a basic blog. We need to write more and more in depth about the different topics. And the more coverage and the more in depth that we have, the better results we will have, not only with LLMs and things like ChatGPT, but also for SEO.
Awesome. That's fantastic. As an example for me, I have a 7-year-old daughter and I discovered her gymnastics class by simply asking ChatGPT, hey, what are some activities for like a 7-year-old that would keep her active and just like allow her to get exercise? And the path I went down in the conversation allowed me to discover High Flyers Gymnastics. It's the gymnastics class she's entered. Now she's doing incredibly well, and we discovered that on ChatGPT. And I don't even believe it was from the actual website of High Flyers Gymnastics. It was from some third party review. So would love to get your perspective in terms of like, yes, there's a brand itself producing high quality content that's valuable related to whatever, prompts or conversations that are being initiated by the user. You also have an interesting perspective on like how third party platforms like Reddit play such an influence on really getting prioritized. So talk a little bit about the intersection between owned content and the importance of owned content versus having a strategy around, Reddit. And I know you have a fascinating product called Reddit Intelligence. Would love to kind of like understand how you think about, owned content relative to third-party content, whether it be publishers or platforms like Reddit.
That's a big question. The way I see it is that, as we talked a few minutes ago, it's a key thing to do is to increase our coverage and the different surfaces that our brand is mentioned and our brand is covered. Obviously, if it's owned, that's great, but we shouldn't limit ourselves into just publishing things in our own domain or our own website or our own blog, because there is opportunity to be mentioned and have citations, everywhere on the internet, because that is helpful too, because LLMs will consume everything. So yeah, Reddit is one of the places that LLMs base their answers for. Reddit is the place where people naturally have conversations around the topics that they care, that they're passionate about. And it's an incredible place to get all kinds of insights. And also it's the place where your audience is actively are having conversations either about you or about your competition. So first of all, it's super important to understand that conversation, because we can find very useful insights like what they like and dislike about us and our competition, what gets them excited, what gets them frustrated, because we can use these type of insights that are happening right now in an unfiltered way from our target audience. We can use that not only for our SEO purposes or our content efforts or our AEO efforts, but also can feed us all kinds of interesting insights, for example, from a product perspective, to understand what we need to improve from on the product side. So it's super important to take advantage of these conversations that are already happening, because the insights are there. There are multiple ways on how we can take advantage of these insights. We can basically navigate to Reddit and read this stuff yourself manually, or you can also use tools like Reddit Intelligence that can help you do that in a more automatic way with the help of AI. But also, I think that's the first step, understanding, getting insights. And then the next step in terms of Reddit is to join the conversation.
Yep.
That's also important. Obviously, you need to tackle this on Reddit in a very careful way, because Reddit hates brands, hates self-promotion, hates spam. If you are lazy and just try to join the conversation just to plug your own brand without really adding value to the conversation, not only you won't provide results, you will get banned from these relevant subreddits.
Yep.
So you should be careful. I think that the most important thing on Reddit is provide value and don't ask anything back. And if you're a brand, just plug it when it makes sense. But you should care more into adding value to the conversation and not pulling value from the conversation, and take it from there.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit about Reddit Intelligence and what sort of insights you help brands understand to ensure that they're approaching their strategy on Reddit in a way that's not going to get them banned.
That's a good question. With Reddit Intelligence, basically you can define a set of subreddits that you want to track, threads and comments. And then we also allow to structure that information. For example, you can define different topics that you want to detect. So you can tag a particular thread or comment with a particular topic that you care about. And we provide different tools to basically understand the conversation on what people are talking about, what is popular, what is trending right now, what frustrates users. And basically, that provides you insights on, for example, relevant conversations that you can jump in and add value. That also provides relevant information of when people are discussing about you. For example, maybe you had an outage, or your product is down and you have downtime. People are complaining. It's interesting to have that information right away and have an alert right away. So, for example, last week I talked with a customer that they have this problem that, they have a downtime and they have a big problem, and people started complaining on Reddit, and I were able to jump in right away, and basically join the conversation and provide relevant information in a timely way. So we provide alerts when something happens. We alert you via email so you can jump in right away. We also send you emails with insights in a daily or weekly or monthly basis. So we provide different type of tools so you can get the insights and get notifications when it matters the most.
Amazing, amazing. Yeah, no, that sounds extremely useful for that particular channel. Talking more broadly about content, one of the things we see with brands is like typically when you're managing your own content, the cycle time of, actually just identifying there's a gap and then generating new content to ensure it's available on your website for, SEO, GEO. It's typically that cycle time has traditionally taken like, weeks, if not months. Regulated industries like typically take months to update their content on their website. How important is like, frequency of information and relevance in that moment in time for a brand to consider for either SEO or a geo? Would love your perspective on like and I'm gonna ask a follow-up question to this, just a heads up on like the content creation process and really how to streamline that. But I would just at
Mhm.
this point really like to understand like the impact of like, content frequency on getting better results.
Frequency is super important. Obviously, it's one of the things that matters. For example, in SEO, for example, it's one of the 200 and something ranking factors. And for particular search queries, it's key. If your content is old, it won't rank. So, for example, if you're searching something like what are the best sentiment analysis tools in 2025, you won't rank with a really old crappy tool, a blog post that were a listicle that say the same thing but in 2023. And so there are certain keywords that frequency is key, and it's one of the ranking factors that really matters. But at the end of the day, in my opinion, it really depends on where you are in your SEO journey, in the sense that if you are still in the early stages of your SEO journey, there are a lot of different either keywords that you are still not ranking and that you still don't have any type of content after that keyword, or there are like big topics that you are not covering, for example, with a content pillar, or different topics around that pillar. In my eyes, it's more valuable to go after depth and coverage, cover those missing keywords, those missing topics, create those pillars. And once you are mature in your SEO journey, you're covering like the most important things, and you need to start, worrying about optimizing that content so you can, rank better for each of these content. Then you need to start worry a little bit more about freshness,
Mhm.
and keep things updated and launch new things on the same old topics.
Got it. Let's double click on the process of optimization. So you mentioned coverage, and part of coverage is understanding where your gaps are. And I know that's something that you spend time doing. So surfacing up the gaps and then, identifying a piece of content that needs to be created related to a product or service that you provide throughout the entire funnel, top to bottom of funnel, potentially even support. And then really kind of like generating that content, producing that content, In many organizations, it requires like approval from, you know, compliance teams and leaderships teams before it even goes to the site, which creates this cycle time of like weeks, if not months, to get new content on your website. So when you think about the optimization of content in that workflow, what are some of the things you've seen that, like, you know, your customer base, and your the most savviest brands out there are adopting to streamline that optimization process and to measure the effectiveness of content in producing better results? And I know that's a big question, but let's break that down into each step, and maybe start with gap identification and really kind of like that production of new content.
That's definitely a big question, and there are different approaches to this to tackle this challenge. Um, but I think it's all about understanding what are those gaps that are like have the biggest opportunities for you in terms of driving results and having an impact on results. So, for example, maybe there is a particular keyword that either is high volume that you haven't really considered or created content for, that you have created like a related content around that same topic, around that same keyword. I think that's a clear example that's one of the clear gap that you should be focusing on, because the more content that you have around the same topic, the easier it is to rank for that content. And actually adding a new piece of content not only makes that new piece a little bit easier to rank for that new piece, but also helps the other content around, because in the eyes of something like Google, it will see you more and more like a thought leader on that niche topic that you are trying to cover. So that's the key thing, you know, identifying those things that can drive a lot of results and that you already covered related topics. And it's not only identifying opportunities in terms of just keyword volume. So, for example, how many people search for that keyword on a given month, but also thinking about results and conversions, because there are some keywords that maybe, you know, there are not really a lot of people searching for those keywords every month. Maybe, you know, it's just a couple of hundred people searching for that every month, but it's still super valuable to create content. So, for example, back in my previous company, Moncler, one of the things that we did was sentiment analysis. And yeah, we had this amazing pillar where we talked about everything related to sentiment analysis, and we ranked for this keyword sentiment analysis that in our space was a big keyword. We ranked number one for several years. And it was amazing. I think it was like maybe 70,000 people every month searching for that particular keyword every month. So we were ranking number one. So it brought a lot of traffic our way. But for example, something less simple and niche as sentiment analysis in Google Sheets or sentiment analysis in Excel, maybe those keywords were like 200 searches every month, 300 searches every month. But because those people searching for that have like a high commercial intent, they are basically already know what is sentiment analysis, and they already knew where they want to use sentiment analysis. They were just looking for a tool that allows them to do that. It was just for us, just like a plug and play to, you know, win, in the sense that most of these users were ready to use a product like Moncler. And actually, these niche keywords drove more conversions and more customers than the main keyword, you know. And for us, was super easy to rank because we already have this content pillar and several like pillar clusters around that pillar to provide depth to different topics, and then adding this, identifying these opportunities and creating content for those was really like a really high impact, low effort gain, because these pieces not only was easier to rank because there were less competition, also the content wasn't as difficult or as demanding or as in-depth, you know, was content that we can produce really easily.
Yep. No, that's amazing. I think that, like, you know, one thing is like you can go after the keywords that everybody's going after, or you can say, hey, you know what, there's this interesting trend going on that we can actually produce very rich and in-depth content around that is a niche. It may not have as big of an audience, but it's a growing audience over time. That's what I believe you mean as, from an opportunity perspective. You want to find those opportunities. When you find those opportunities, I'd love to, on this theme of optimization, what are the key things to measure when you find like a niche like that where you can produce content? When you go through this loop of really kind of understanding whether the content is producing better results, what are the key metrics that you're focused on?
Uh, uh, I'm a, I'm a, I have a product background, and I lean towards conversions. It's all about generating revenue, increasing revenue, and getting new customers. I don't care about impressions. I don't care about visits because at the end of the day, I see that as vanity metrics. Um, you know, I care about if I do a particular piece, if that piece drives new revenue. That's how I base impact on these opportunities and these optimization efforts.
Awesome. When you think about like AI visibility, and GEO and AEO, many brands right now are tracking mentions and share of voice. Like, how many times are you showing up in the answer, and how much of the answer are you really consuming based on
Mhm.
citation usage and sources that are cited? So when you think about that, do you feel that like mentions and share of voice are like equivalent to impression and they're sort of vanity metrics, and we're still like, under the same, sort of like stance that, conversions and transactions are still the thing that matter the most? Would love your perspective on like, the adjacency between the two worlds.
Not really, because at the end of the day, I see citations and mentions in third-party websites
Mm,
uh, as the way, besides traditional SEO, getting citation is the way to being featured on ChatGPT whenever a user asks for a particular prompt or makes a question. That's how you get ChatGPT to say, "Hey, visit this brand. They solved their problem." So I think that's like it's the way you get that. Then you need to really think on if that's actually providing, value for your company and generating revenue. That's another discussion, maybe because maybe you're focusing on a particular set of prompts or citations that really don't, convert customers,
mhm, mhm.
and you're wasting your time. And so at the end of the day, you still need to think if your efforts are driving sales and driving revenue. But yeah, most probably there are a set of prompts and a set of citations that is a low-hanging fruit to increase revenue, and there is a huge set of prompts and potential citations that is just a waste of time. It's a matter of fact of discerning what generates good leads and high quality leads, and that therefore generates revenue in the long term.
Yep. So new interface, but like everything that matters that historically mattered, like how many conversions and ultimately what's driving the most transactions and value to your business. That's the ROI that matters. That's
Yeah.
consistent. Like every interface, no matter what it is. Great. I would love to just touch on a little bit about the future of, really kind of what the core of what you're doing is and what you're helping brands with. Where do you see this all going? Like we have, the model providers, and we have Google in sort of transition. They have their SEO business, and then now they're transitioning to AI overviews and new models. And then, even organizations like Meta are really thinking about like, how we have our traditional like paid ad model, but then, we're going to generative, maybe it's GEM, and then you have like OpenAI rumored to building their own ad platform. So I'd love your perspective in terms of like how you see the next like 3 to 5 years evolving when it comes to this. And almost if you look in your crystal ball between now and then, where do you see this all going, as it relates to the business that you're in, like really SEO intelligence and helping your brands transition into the future?
That's another big question that we could be hours discussing, go back and forth. But um, honestly, I think that nobody really knows where this thing is going. We are in a really experimental period where not only Google, but companies like OpenAI, Perplexity, they are still experimenting. They are still figuring things out on what works, what doesn't. And even they don't have a real clue on where this is going. I know because on Hugging Face, that is one of the leading players, we have no clue. And I also have a few friends on OpenAI, they don't have a clue either. They have a hypothesis, but they know that they are hypotheses. So that's one thing. So I think it's important with this type of uncertainty and this and understanding that it's an experimental period that there are really different possible outcomes of this experimental phase. Is that what are the ground seeking truths of this period, and is that models will get better and that models can analyze large amounts of data. And I think that you need to work with that. So for me, that's really important to, for example, to really focus on increasing your coverage of the content that you provide, not only on the channels that you own, but also everywhere on the internet, not only Reddit, but everywhere in the internet. You need to increase your coverage. You need to be mentioned more because that's new opportunities to be discovered by these amazing new AI models that will keep improving. So that's on one hand. And also the other hand is we can use it as our tool, these models, because as I said, there is a lot of data out there. There is a lot of insights that can help us make better decisions on, what topics we need to focus on, what, our target audience cares about. So you can do use these AI models to get these insights by analyzing the right sources to make better decisions on what type of content you need to create and what things you should be focusing on. So for me, that's the key thing moving forward. And I'm trying to build tools that help people working in the SEO and in the content world help with that. Help them, analyze the SERP is super important to understanding what Google rewards for a given keyword, and that gives you insight on what you need to do in order to rank for a target keyword. The data is over there. In the past, I used to do it manually. It takes a lot of time to do that correctly. But now with the help of AI, you can analyze that data automatically, and really understand, hey, I need to do a video for this particular keyword. If I do a blog post, it's a waste of time because that's not what users are looking for this target keyword, and that's not what Google rewards. And I need to talk about this and this and this. And in this particular topic, nobody's talking about this key thing that is super important thing. So that's also something that you can detect by analyzing the data. And that's just on the SEO side. For example, on the Reddit side, again, that's a lot of interesting conversations happening right now by your target audience about you and your competition. And it's up to you to take advantage of that information. That's why I built a Reddit intelligence tool to help users mine that information to get better insights and make better decisions at the end of the day.
Amazing. I think you said it best, right? No one really knows where this is going, and this is why, brands and enterprises need guidance from individuals like yourself, tools to ensure that they can think strategically, right? Because tools are great, but tools are just a pathway to think strategically, as you said, on what to focus on. And if you know what to focus on and you can find those opportunities, essentially you can transition into like the new way that the world is forming and structuring around us in a much more elegant fashion, and it's iterative and it's a learning process, and your mindset needs to be focused on like every day is day one, right? Like, because there are so many opportunities emerging in this landscape where not even the model providers really know where this is going, right? So really looking at the world as like we can actually craft something that really plays into the future. I think it's super exciting time for you, Federico. And I really, really appreciate a lot of the insights that you brought to the table today. I think it's going to be really useful to our customer base, and really excited to get this out there. So thank you so much for being a part of Answers by Senso, and wish you all the best of luck, and hopefully there's opportunities for us to collaborate in the future.
Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.